Hey, what's up guys? This video is for section 2.1, which is writing equations, and we are going to start looking at what is an equation and how to start solving for a specific variable when we have an equation. But today we are just going to write an equation, so we are going to translate a sentence into an equation. So let's go ahead and first look at what is the definition of an equation. So an equation is a statement indicating that two mathematical expressions, and let me just show you guys this word, expressions, equal to each other. So I have a picture here, and you guys seen those balance scales around, but the idea of an equation is just like a balance scale. You have one side with a mathematical expression, and the other side is going to equal that mathematical expression. And the way that a balance scale works is the weight on one side has to equal the weight on the other side so it can be balanced. So you guys have the same weight on each side of these balance scales. Now, I have the picture of red balls on one side, and on the right side you guys see on the balance scale, and on the left side we have 3 balls, and then we have like a green bag, and we have a variable x. So the equation, the way it works is when we have an expression or some numbers on one side of the scale, well, this weight has to equal the other side of the scale. So if I want to know how many red balls is inside of this green bag right now, let's imagine that I don't know how many. I use a variable to represent that number. I can say X number of red balls. So it can be 3, 4, 10, 20 different red balls. But I need to know how many must be inside. So this weight on the left side of the scale is going to equal, you see the equal sign in the middle, the right side of the balance scale. Now we can use common sense on this one because we do have a picture, and the picture, the visual, can help us find the answer. So on the right side you see that we have total of 7 red balls. On the left side, well, we see 3. So in order to make this equal to the right side, well, this inside of the bag there has to be 4 red balls. So when you have 4 inside and 3 over here, that's going to be 7. And that's going to be equal, you guys see the equal sign in the middle, the right side of the scale. So the number that x has to equal is 4. And that's the idea. You guys want to find a balance, a number for the variable that will have a balance on that scale. Now, obviously, an equation is not going to have a picture for you guys, but I do have some examples here. So this one is an example of an equation. You have a mathematical expression on the left side of the equal sign. So there's the equal, just like the middle of the scale. So that's the left side. And on the right side, we just have a natural number, or you can say an integer. We just have a number, which is 8. Now, you guys see the variable here. You guys have 2 times x plus 3. And this side of the scale, go back to that picture, has to equal the right side. So it's just like this one here. We have a variable with 3 red balls, but it has to equal the same weight as 7 red balls. So that's what it is. So an equation, we have variables, we have numbers, we have plus, minus, you can have parentheses. Just to give you guys more examples, here's another equation here. And this is more self-explanatory. If you guys actually do the work here, on the left side, we do have an expression, no variables, but we have a mathematical expression. And 5 plus 4, well, that's 9. And that's has to equal to the right side of that equation. And then we have a different expression, 6 plus 3. But guess what? That's also 9. And let me write that down so you guys can see that on the left side, 5 plus 4 is 9. And it equals 6 plus 3, 9. So that's a balance. We have the same weight on each side of that scale, or on each side of the equal sign. So it's just a balance that we need to have. Another example, you can have fractions, x divided by 4 You guys have a number here, plus 5, equals, and we have 7x minus 3 on the right side of the equal sign. So we do have one side of the scale or the equation with a mathematical expression. We have fractions, variables, we have a plus in the middle, equals another fraction. Sorry, not another fraction, another mathematical expression. And remember that the two sides, they don't have to equal, they don't have to look the same, they don't have to be the same numbers. For example, here, let's go back to this one. The numbers are different, 5 plus 4 and 6 plus 3. But at the end, they give you guys the same weight. They give you guys the same value. So the left side has to equal the right side. We can have parentheses like this one here. We have 2 times the quantity of the sum of x and y equals 3x minus 10y. So they don't look the same. One side has parentheses, the other side has no parentheses. We have two different variables, x and y, but there's an equal in the middle, or there's an equal sign in that expression. So that's why it's an equation. So every time you guys do have an equal sign and you have expressions on each side, it is an equation. Now the goal is to find what is the value of that variable. Just like this one here. We wanted to know what number, how many Red Bulls has to be inside of this green bag in order to make this scale balance. And that's what we're going to look for. We want to know what number goes here that's going to equal the right side of the expression. So you have to look for a number that you multiply by 2. That's because you have 2 times x, so 2 times a number plus 3 has to equal 8. And that's our goal. Now, the number can be any number. That's why it's called a variable. The number can be negative, positive, fraction, decimals, and that's what we are going to learn. We are going to learn how to find that number for the value of the variable. But first, before we actually find the number, which is actually solving an equation, when you solve is you want to find the value of that variable. We want to learn how to translate equations. So we're not solving today. We are not looking for that variable, the value of the variable, but we want to write an equation. So let's go ahead and read some sentences, and we're going to translate those sentences into equations. So let's look at number 1 here. Number 1 says 3 times b less than 100 is as much as the product of 6 and b. So we want to translate, let me actually underline that word, translate each sentence into an equation. So first of all, we need to have an equal sign. And then we want to have some expressions on the left side of the equal sign and on the right side of the equal sign. So one thing that you always have to look for is those specific keywords that I'm going to show you that will help you write the equation. So first, the word is right here. That word is means equal. So when you guys look for that translation from a sentence to an equation, the word is going to set your balance scale. So I'm going to use the equal sign for is. Now on the left side of the word is, I have all of this right here. So I'm just going to kind of like underline this side. So this is going to be on the left side of the equal sign. And everything after the word is, so let me just write this or underline all of this right here. That's going to be on the right side. Let's go ahead and make sense of the problem. So here we have 3 times b less than 100. Now, I know that less than is an inequality, but here we're not going to use inequalities less than because we have an equal sign. You guys can have a less than or an equal sign. You're not going to have both of them at the same time. So when we say less than, that means you guys will subtract. Just like more than, you guys are adding. More means add, or less means subtract. But there's a keyword that's going to actually switch the order when you guys have that subtraction. And I'm just going to circle that keyword. The keyword is then. Remember that when you guys translate a sentence into an algebraic expression, the word then is going to switch the order. So we do have minus, let me start with the minus here, and I'm going to have, let me just read it again, 3 times b less than 100. So that means that I'm going to have to switch 3 times b on the right side of the minus and the 100 on the left side, because I'm going to switch the order. So I'm going to have 100 minus 3 times b. Now 3 times b is just 3b. You guys don't need the times in the middle, but that's what it is, 3 times b. So once again, since we have less than, that's going to be your subtraction. So less than means subtract, and the word then means you have to switch the order. So 100 goes first, and 3 times b goes after the minus. On the right side of the equal sign, so this one here, you guys have is as much as the product of 6 and b. Now we know what product means. Product means you multiply. So you are going to multiply 6 and b. So when you guys write the multiplication, that's going to be 6b. So that's your actual equation right there. We have 100 minus 3b equals 6b. All of that equation means 3 times b less than 100 is as much as the product of 6 and b. So let's look at number 2. Number 2 says 2/3 the sum of x and 9 is identical to x minus 5. Another keyword is identical. Now we know the word is means an equal sign. And identical, well, you guys know that means equal. So let me underline the word is identical. So that means it's going to be equal. And I'm going to put the equal sign right here for it's identical. So let's go ahead and look on the left side of that word is and identical. So on the left side, I have 2/3 the sum of x and 9. So we know we're going to have a fraction, 2/3. So my 2/3, let me just underline that, 2/3 is right here, 2/3. And I do have the sum, 2/3 the sum of x and 9. So I'm going to have to add x and 9. I'm not going to change the order because I don't have the word then, but I'm just going to add x plus, I'm going to have the plus 9. Now since we do have 2/3 the sum, well, that means we have to use parentheses, because all of this parentheses is going to be the quantity or the sum. I'm just going to underline the word sum right here. There's a plus of x and 9. So we do have 2/3 times the quantity of x plus 9, or 2/3 parentheses x plus 9. On the right side, it says is identical to x minus 5. Now that's very self-explanatory. You just write down the x minus 5. So my equation is 2/3 times the quantity of x plus 9 equals x minus 5. Let's look at number 3. Number 3 says 2 plus the quotient of a number and 9 is the same as 16. So let me just put first, let me underline the word is. So that means my equal sign. So I'm going to start with my equal sign right here. That's how you always start, with the equal. On the left side of the word is, all of this here, it says 2 plus the quotient. Now quotient means you have a fraction. Quotient, fraction. Let me underline that word. Quotient is going to be a fraction of a number and 8. So first, let's go ahead and put the 2. So 2 plus the quotient, this is my fraction line, a number. Now for a number, I'm just going to use a variable here, and I'm going to choose y for this sentence. It can be any letter in the alphabet, but I'm just going to use y for a number. So the quotient of a number and 8. So I have the 8 on the bottom. So there's the 2 plus y over 8. The quotient of y and 8, a number and 8, is the same as 16. So that's all of that is going to equal 16. So my equation is 2 plus y over 8 equals 16. And the last one, guys, it says 4 times the sum of the squares of m and p is, so there's the word is, 48. So let me underline the word is first of all. So there's the is, and all of this before the word is going to be on the left side of the equal sign. So I do have 4 times the sum. So I'm going to multiply 4 and the sum of the squares. Now you have to really understand what the square means, and the squares means you have exponent of 2. That's square. Now you guys do have the squares of m and p. So first, I'm just going to put 4 times the sum. So I'll put 4 times the sum, and I'm using parentheses because inside of the parentheses, I will have the sum. So there's the plus, the sum of what? The squares of m, so it's m squared, and p squared. We got the variables. We have 4 times the sum of the squares of m and p is 48. So after the equal sign, I'm going to have the number 48. So there's the equation. You guys have 2 different variables, m and p, and we have the squares of the m and p, m squared and p squared, and everything's going to equal 48. So this is how you write equations. Now eventually, guys, for the next section, the next video you guys can watch, I'm going to show you how to find that value of the variable. So that's solving an equation. You want to know what is x equals, or the y equals, or the b equals. There's the b right here, or the m, or the p. So we can find those values by solving. But this video is just writing equations so you guys can have an idea what an equation looks like and where equations come from. And then we're going to start solving for the next lesson, the next video. Now let's go ahead and look at some formulas that you guys have seen in the past. And we are going to translate those sentences that they give us. You guys see sentence number 5 and 6 into a formula that you guys are familiar with. Okay. Now some formulas you guys don't use a lot in junior high or elementary, but they do exist in physics, in mathematics, in science, and those formulas are formulas that we actually use to find specific values. So let's go ahead and look at the first sentence, sentence number 5. It says here that the area of a triangle, so you guys have heard that before, the area of a triangle equals, so there's the given word, the actual equals would be the equal sign, the product, so we know that's multiplication, of 1/2 the length of the base and the height. So first of all, we need some variables because this formula it will have a couple variables, and I'm going to give you guys the ones that we use for the formula, the most common ones that we use, and then we're going to write down the formula. So we use A for area. First of all, let me just put A equals area. I'm going to use B for base. That's very common. And I'm going to use H for height. So I'm going to have 3 different variables, and let me just write down the word here, height, and I'm going to put the equation together. So first, I'm going to start with the equal sign here. So there's my equal. I'm going to have the area of a triangle. So I'm going to use A for the area. There's the A. We know this formula is for the area of a triangle. Now it equals to the product. So I'm going to multiply 1/2 the length of the base and the height. So I'm going to start multiplying 1/2 times the base times the height. So I am multiplying those 3 different things. Now notice that I'm not using anything in between. I don't need the times symbol in between, because by default, when you don't have anything in between 2 terms, you are multiplying those 2 or 3 or 4 different terms. So that's why I'm not using the times in the middle. So that's the formula. We are going to write the formula for that specific sentence. So A equals 1/2 times the base times the height, and that's the area of a triangle. Now the next one, number 6, it says Celsius temperature C is 5, so there's a C, 5 nines times the difference of Fahrenheit temperature F and 32. Now, here in the United States, we actually use an English metric system, which means that we use Fahrenheit. Here in the Valley, you guys know how high the actual temperature goes, and we always use Fahrenheit. But when you guys use a metric system, which is outside of the United States, they usually use Celsius. Now, the number, the actual temperature, the heat is the same, but the number is going to differ. It's going to be different because Celsius is way smaller. The number we use in Celsius is way smaller than in Fahrenheit. So, and just to give you guys an idea, here where we live in the valley, this is in Pure Valley. Actually, the temperature goes up to 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, Celsius, that can go from 49 Celsius to 50 Celsius to 51 Celsius. So the number is smaller, but obviously the heat is the same. But in Fahrenheit, the number is bigger. So 115 degrees Fahrenheit versus 4950 degrees Celsius. So let me just write down the formula here. So we have Celsius temperature C is, so there's the word is. I'm just going to have underline the word is. So there's the equal sign. 5 nines times, so I'm going to circle that so I don't forget. I'm going to have to multiply 5 nines times the difference. So I will subtract. I have the difference of the Fahrenheit temperature F and 32. So we do have two different variables. We know that C is going to be Celsius and F is going to be Fahrenheit. So I am going to use those Fahrenheit. I'm going to use those different variables to write down my formula. So I'm going to start with the variable C. So there's the Celsius. Celsius temperature C is 5 nines. So that's going to be 5 over 9 times the difference. So that means I'm going to need parentheses because I'm going to have a quantity. I'm going to have to subtract. So the difference minus here, Fahrenheit temperature F and 32. So that's my equation right here. And this is actually a true equation or a true formula for people to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. So if you want to know how many Celsius is 100 degrees Fahrenheit, well, F is going to be 100. You guys substitute here 100. You subtract 32, and whatever that is, the quantity, you multiply by 5 over 9, and that's going to be in Celsius. Now this one here is actually going backwards. We want to translate the equation into a sentence. So first let's understand the equation. The equation I have is a fraction 3 over 4 j plus 16 equals j. So we can actually use the word a number instead of j. We can say j, 3/4 j, or we can say the product of 3/4 and a number. So there's many ways you guys can do it, but let me just give you guys one way you guys can write the sentence. So this is one way to write down the sentence. It says the product of 3/4 and a number plus 16 is equal to the number. Now, you can also use j. Instead of using a number, you can actually say j. So we can say the product of 3/4 and j plus 16 is equal to j. So you can also use the actual variable you guys see, or you can use a number to represent that variable. Now let's go ahead and look at the next equation, number 8. You guys have 2 times, remember there's nothing in between, so you are multiplying, 2 times the quantity, or you guys can say parentheses, 2 times parentheses a squared plus b equals 20. So I know I'm going to have to say multiplication. I know I do have an exponent of 2, so I'm going to use the word squared. The sum, so we do have addition, equals 20. So here's an example of a sentence that represents that equation. 2 times the quantity of the sum of a squared and b is identical to 20. So that sentence represents this equation that we have here. So there's many ways you guys can actually write down an equation that represents that sentence. But the keywords has to be in that sentence that represents what we have in the equation. So always try to make sense when you guys write a sentence. Try to make sense of what the problem is. And it has to relate to what you see in that equation. If you're adding, you have to say the sum. If you're multiplying, you can use product. If you have a fraction, you guys can say quotient. The equal sign, the word is, the actual equal word, equal sign. You guys can say it's identical to, but you have to make sure that it makes sense and you are able to translate the equation into a sentence. Alright guys, this concludes this video for this section, which is writing equations. If you guys like my videos, you guys can hit that like button. You can also subscribe to my channel and make sure you guys practice your math, and I'll see you guys later.